The metal strut came down on my leg before I even understood what was falling. There was no warning sound, no groan of the ceiling, just weight and pain arriving at the same instant, and then the wet, splitting noise that every Vanir child is taught to fear. On my world, that sound means one thing. It means the limb is gone. Not gone from the body yet, but gone from use, gone from hope, already being written off by the mind before the body has finished screaming. I lay on the cargo floor of a station I did not belong to, breathing through my teeth, watching sparks drift down from a broken conduit above me like slow orange rain. My name is Vesa. I had been on this station for 11 days, a passenger on a supply route, waiting for a transfer ship that was 3 days late. I was not supposed to be anywhere near the loading bay when the strut gave way. I had simply taken a wrong turn looking for water rations, and the wrong turn had nearly ended me. I heard boots on metal before I heard a voice. Fast boots, uneven, the sound of someone running without caution, without the careful pacing my people are raised on. A man appeared above me, dropping to his knees in the coolant fluid without a moment of hesitation, and I remember thinking, even through the pain, that he had not stopped to consider whether kneeling there was wise. His name, I would learn later, was Callum. He had brown hair pushed back from his forehead in a hurry, and eyes that moved over my leg, the way a technician's eyes move over a broken machine, searching for the fastest way to fix it, rather than the safest way to feel sorry about it. "Don't move," he said, pressing a hand flat above the brake. "I need you to stay still for me." I wanted to tell him that stillness was already my plan, that Vanir bodies do not thrash, that we conserve even our pain, but the words did not come. Only sound came, high and broken, and he winced at the sound as if it hurt him too. "I know," he said. "I know, I'm sorry." That struck me as strange even then, an apology, in the middle of trying to save me, as if the act of helping still required forgiveness for the pain it caused along the way. On my world, no one apologizes for triage. You are grateful simply to have been chosen to be saved at all. He shouted something into a device on his wrist, words I did not fully catch, and within moments, more footsteps arrived, quicker and lighter. A woman knelt on my other side. Her name was Nora, and she carried a case that she opened with the kind of speed that suggested she had done this before, many times, in many worse places. "Compound fracture," she said, looking at my leg without flinching. "We need to stabilize before we move her." "Will the splint hold?" Callum asked. "For now, long term, she needs proper repair. Vanir bone density is higher than ours. It won't set right without support." I remember wanting to correct her, to tell her that Vanir bone, once broken this badly, this close to a major joint, does not set at all. It is removed. It is replaced with mechanical structure, if the person can afford it, or the limb is simply lost if they cannot. I had never once, in all my life, heard of a fracture like mine healing on its own. I tried to explain this. My voice came out in fragments, and Nora leaned closer to listen, her face patient in a way that made the panic in my chest ease slightly. Just enough for me to keep speaking. "It will not heal," I managed. "You must remove it before infection spreads. Please, do not waste supplies trying." Nora's expression did something I did not expect. It softened, but not with pity, with a kind of quiet determination that looked almost like stubbornness. "We don't do that here," she said. "We don't just cut and run because something looks hard to fix." I did not understand her then. I thought perhaps it was a translation error, some idiom my implant had not rendered correctly. On Vanir, resources are never wasted on the impossible. It is not cruelty, it is survival. A dying world does not forgive sentiment. They lifted me onto a stretcher with more care than the situation seemed to call for, given how little time they seemed to think they had. The station rocked slightly beneath us, a tremor from somewhere deeper in the hull, and Callum's hand tightened briefly on the stretcher rail before he forced it to relax. "What was that?" I asked. "Structural stress," he said, too quickly, too smoothly, in the voice of someone deciding not to frighten a patient who was already frightened enough. "Nothing you need to worry about." I would learn, hours later, that the station's outer ring had taken damage from the same debris field that had shaken the strut loose above me, that the transfer ship I had been waiting for was not simply late. It had been diverted, along with every other vessel in range, to help evacuate a research outpost that had been struck harder than we had. That the humans running this station had spent the last 6 hours quietly working 2 emergencies at once, mine and a much larger one, without once making me feel like the smaller of the two. They took me to a medical bay that smelled of antiseptic and burnt wiring, both scents at once, evidence of a ship holding itself together through sheer stubbornness. Nora worked on my leg, while another voice, a man named Dennis, argued with someone on a comm channel about priority queues and available beds. "She's stable enough to wait," Dennis said, not unkindly, glancing at me. "Put the outpost survivors first. She'll hold." I appreciated the honesty of it. On Vanir, we do not pretend that everyone matters equally in a crisis. What surprised me was what came next. "She's not going in a queue," Nora said, not looking up from my leg. "We treat her here, now, while we wait for transport capacity. I'm not letting a fracture like this sit untouched for 6 hours just because someone else's emergency is louder." "There isn't time for elective work," Dennis said. "This isn't elective. This is a spine of steel about to shatter through skin if we don't set it properly. Get me the bone knitter. I don't care what queue it's supposed to be in." I lay there listening to 2 humans argue over how much effort I was worth, and neither of them, not once, suggested that the answer might be less than everything they had. They gave me something for the pain that made the room swim gently at its edges. I remember Callum's face above mine, checking something on a monitor, his brow drawn tight with concentration, rather than worry now, which somehow felt more reassuring than kindness would have. "You're going to feel a pinch," Nora said, then some pressure, then, hopefully, nothing at all. I felt the pinch. I felt the pressure. Then I felt nothing at all, and the room dissolved into a soft, formless dark. When I woke, the first thing I noticed was silence. No alarms, no distant tremors in the hull, no argument over channels about queues and priorities. Just the low hum of machines keeping steady watch over me, and beyond that, quiet. I turned my head and found Nora sitting nearby, reading something on a datapad, looking exhausted in the particular way of someone who has been awake far longer than their body wanted to allow. "Welcome back," she said, setting the pad aside. "You gave us a bit of a scare there, holding out on a spine of steel like that." "How long?" 2 days. We had to keep you under while the knitter worked. Your bone density made it slow going, but it took." "Took," I repeated, not understanding. "The fracture's set, bones fusing. You're not losing the leg, Vesa." I stared at her, waiting for the correction, the moment where she would explain that she meant something smaller, something less impossible than what her words seemed to promise. The correction did not come. "That is not possible," I said. "Vanir bone does not fuse after a break like mine. It is removed. Everyone knows this. Everyone on your world, maybe," Nora said, not unkindly. "We used a graft compound alongside the knitter. It's not something we'd normally have on hand for your species, but your blood chemistry turned out to be more compatible with our supplies than the records suggested. Lucky, honestly, saved us having to improvise something worse." I did not fully understand what she meant by compatible, not then. I only understood that my leg, which should have been gone, was instead resting under a light frame, warm and whole and undeniably still attached to me. "Try wiggling your toes," she said, gently. I did. They moved. "Good," she said, smiling for the first time since I had woken. "Give it another day before you try standing. Your body's been through enough surprises." I did not listen, not entirely. 2 days passed slowly, each hour filled with the strange sensation of a limb healing in a way my own biology insisted should be impossible. On the 3rd day, alone in the room, while Nora attended to someone else down the corridor, I decided I would test it myself, quietly, carefully, the way any sensible Vanir would test something they did not yet trust. I swung my legs over the edge of the cot. The frame around my leg had been removed that morning, replaced with a thin support wrap that Nora said was mostly precaution now rather than necessity. I placed both feet on the cold floor and felt no resistance from the leg that should have still been fragile, should have still been asking me for caution. I stood. There was no pain. There was no wobble, no warning ache telling me to sit back down before I did something foolish. I stood there for a long moment, simply breathing, waiting for my body to remind me of what it had been through. It did not. I took a step. Then another. My legs moved beneath me with an ease that felt almost wrong, almost too easy, as if some old negotiation my body had always carried on with itself. The constant, careful bargaining between effort and cost that every Vanir learns before they can walk had simply gone quiet. I reached the far wall of the room faster than I expected, faster than I had ever crossed a room in my life, and had to catch myself against it, startled by my own speed. My heart was pounding, not from pain, but from something closer to disbelief. Nora appeared in the doorway, alerted by the small alarm on my bed that had triggered when I left it. She stopped, taking in the sight of me standing across the room, upright, steady, breathing hard but not from injury. "You weren't supposed to be up yet," she said, though there was no real anger in it, only mild exasperation, and beneath that, the faint satisfaction of someone watching a difficult repair hold better than expected. I could not wait any longer, I admitted. I needed to know if it was real. And? I looked down at the leg that should not have healed, that should have been removed and replaced with something colder and mechanical, and felt a strange, unfamiliar lightness settle in my chest. "It is real," I said. "I do not understand how, but it is real." Nora crossed the room and helped steady me, though I did not truly need the support anymore, and guided me back toward the cot with the patient firmness of someone who had earned the right to insist. "Your blood chemistry is more flexible than we realized," she said, as I sat back down. "Your marrow took to the graft compound faster than anything we've seen from your species before. Whatever the reason, it worked in your favor." I thought of the argument I had overheard through the haze of pain that first day, Dennis insisting I could wait, Nora refusing to let a fracture sit untreated, simply because someone else's crisis was louder. I thought of Callum's apology in the middle of an emergency, as if kindness owed an explanation, even when it was clearly necessary. "On my world," I said slowly, "we do not fight for what cannot be saved. We are taught that hope has a cost, and that cost must always be weighed." Nora sat down across from me, listening in the way she had listened to my broken explanations that first day, patient and unhurried, despite everything the station had clearly been through. "Sounds exhausting," she said, always weighing. "It is survival," I said. "Our world does not forgive waste. Our world doesn't forgive giving up too early either," she said. "We've learned that the hard way, more than once." I did not have an answer for that. I only sat there, flexing fingers I had not lost, feeling the strength of a leg I should not have kept, and understood, quietly, that something inside me had shifted in a way that had nothing to do with bone or blood. 3 days later, they cleared me to walk the corridors unassisted. I moved through the station slowly at first, testing each step, half expecting my body to finally announce the failure it had been threatening since the moment the strut fell. It never did. My steps grew steadier, faster, more certain with every hour, until I found myself walking at a pace that would have been considered reckless on Vanir, a pace that wasted energy on speed instead of saving it for later. I did not slow myself down. For the first time in my life, I did not stop to calculate whether the pace was worth its cost. Callum found me near the observation window on my final morning aboard the station, watching the debris field drift silently past outside the reinforced glass, the same field that had shaken the strut loose above me 8 days earlier. "Heard you're being cleared for transport this afternoon," he said, leaning against the frame beside me. "I am," I said. "I wanted to thank you before I left. You did not hesitate when the strut fell. Most would have called for help and waited." "Waiting seemed like a bad idea at the time," he said simply. "It was the right idea," I said. "I did not expect it. On my world, we are taught to accept loss quickly, so it does not become a larger loss later." "You did not accept it at all." Callum considered that for a moment, watching the debris drift past the window with me. "Guess we're just stubborn like that," he said. "Hard to walk away from something you think you can still fix." I looked down at the leg that should have been gone, that instead carried me steadily across every corridor of this station, faster and surer than it ever had before the accident, and understood that stubbornness, the kind he described so lightly, had changed something in me that I would carry long after I left this place behind. I did not know yet whether I was grateful for that change or unsettled by it. Perhaps, I thought, watching the slow drift of broken metal beyond the glass, I did not need to choose only one. The transport arrived that afternoon, exactly on schedule. No further delays, no further emergencies to interrupt its arrival. I walked to the boarding ramp on my own, without support, without hesitation, moving at a pace that would have startled the version of me who had first stepped onto this station 11 days earlier. Nora and Callum stood together near the docking bay as I passed, and I stopped, just long enough to meet their eyes one final time. "I will not forget this," I told them. "Try to be a little less careful out there," Nora said, smiling. "Wouldn't want that leg going to waste." I laughed, a sound I had not expected to make so easily, and continued toward the ramp. Behind me, the station carried on with its quiet, stubborn business of refusing to give up on things that seemed impossible to save. Ahead of me, the leg that should have been lost carried me forward, steady and sure, into whatever came next.